President Cyril Ramaphosa says youth unemployment is at the top of government's agenda. He made the announcement during the ANC's election manifesto launch in Durban this weekend. According to the Spectator Index, South Africa has the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. The index says 6.2 million South Africans between the ages of 15 and 24 are unemployed. We're now joined by the AU Youth Advisory Council's Dr. Shakira Choonara to talk more about this. So, President Cyril Ramaphosa, Shakira, firstly, good morning. Thank you for coming in. Says they've put youth unemployment at the top of the agenda as an ANC government. Not a new message yet. The unemployment rate among young people continues to climb. Do you think his government will be the government to finally bring it down?
Well, I think it's not just a question of just the South African government, but youth unemployment is a global issue as well. And I've been following the Youth Employment Service, so that President Cyril Ramaphosa implemented last year, right? And there's a couple of thoughts that I have on that. It's about moving beyond the traditional internship programs and how do you actually start to employ more young people. And there's various issues. I'm not sure if you want me to touch on this now, or do you have some follow-up questions around that?
We can perhaps move through them systematically, but one of the things that Ramaphosa has spoken about this past weekend, you touched on internships. He's spoken about apprenticeships, mass apprenticeships as a means to dig young people out of unemployment. How would that differ from the traditional internship mechanism of getting young people employed?
I think, one, our statistics are very weak. So I've been reading up in preparation for this interview, and you start to see that you have an overall picture of what youth employment is, right? But it doesn't look at the cycle of youth unemployment. And basically, an apprenticeship is a one-off initiative. What happens after that? And how do you retain young people within the workforce or even push the workforce further? So there has to be more thinking around that.
You spoke about how weak our data collection, perhaps if you can call it that, is. How do we strengthen that, and how important is it that we have accurate numbers if we are indeed going to bring down youth unemployment?
Well, one, there's a number of targets. I was reading an African Union document which is called the Decade Plan of Action, and actually member states committed between 2008 and 2018 to bring down youth unemployment by 2% a year. Has that happened, right? So we can't really see if our targets are achieved or not if data collection is weak. Data collection has to be in tune to what's actually happening with the youth workforce, right? So firstly, if you're out of school, are you looking for a job? Or if you're a graduate, are you then employed? So there's different stages of employment or the type of employment you're looking at. Then we've got to collect information on working conditions of young people. That's really missing, right?
Because exploitation is quite big as well for people who are new to the job market.
Absolutely. So we're not sure about what pay gaps are. Are they disaggregated by gender for young people? So that sort of data has to be collected. And then post the internship or apprenticeship, how many people are actually absorbed into the labor force? So that sort of data is missing, and that's where we have to start, I believe.
Let's broaden it then and talk about Africa as a whole and the sort of collaboration that is or isn't possible to try and bring down our unemployment numbers. What can be done? What room is there to maneuver either among or at an AU level or SADC regional level even?
So SADC has a youth employment policy framework, and I think there was a meeting last year as well where SADC ministers committed to dealing with unemployment. And one of the key outcomes was cross-border migration, right? And I think that's where the solution lies in Africa, because if you look at the European Union, they really push cross-border migration. What we're doing in Africa is we're making it really, really difficult. I met a young leader from Benin, and he said for him to travel to different parts of Africa to work, it is just so difficult from the visa process to actually moving. So he's got a job secured, but because of government processes, people can't move. So at a SADC level, a regional level, and a continental level, we need to push that flow of migration. It really is a new globalized village that we're living in.
I suppose then it doesn't help that South Africa has somewhat of a negative reputation in various parts of the continent. I mean, some call us the Americans of Africa, in that we are basically very big on isolating ourselves and seeing ourselves outside of the continent. So do we need to change attitudes first towards South Africans and then also deal with issues of visas and the other permits needed to be able to work? Which comes first?
I can't say for sure which comes first. I'd have to say that we have a massive xenophobia problem in the country, and we need to definitely change attitudes. I agree with you there. What I would say is we have a critical skills list in the country, and I know many colleagues that I've worked with who try and apply for this critical skills list and try to be permanent residents or work in our country. It's absolutely difficult. So the government has to look at what skills are we missing and how do we push the cross-border migration, but also address our skills issue at the same time, and whether it's South African or African, we have to be integrated in some way.
Let's speak about the idea that the ANC should firstly not even be making promises to create jobs, given that the government's role is to basically create an environment conducive for the creation of jobs versus the creation of actual positions. Where do you stand on that?
I think that it's a really difficult place South Africa finds itself in the moment, or at the moment. You're seeing about 578 billion rands being spent on the government wage bill. So how much more of a job creation sort of environment are you going to create within government, right? So you now need to start thinking globalization. You need to start thinking scarce skills. So for example, universities need to be pushing young people to know what are the scarce skills in the country. I'm a demographer, for example, and that gives me a competitive edge in the market. So the ANC should go beyond lip service to actually thinking about just the quantity of jobs to the quality of jobs that they're actually creating, and that will really solve the employment problem, I believe.
Shakira, Choonara, thank you so much for your time this morning.